even though okay. You probably also got the information that we are recording the meeting. Of course, we hope that this is okay for everybody. If you don't want to have your video on, then of course, feel free not to switch it on. And in case you would rather not, if you want to ask a question, but you don't want to have your voice on the recording either, then of course you can also write a question in the chat, and we'll try to monitor this closely and answer questions that come in through the chat as well, of course. Okay, I guess I just get started then, unless there's something else, or I need to wait for somebody. No? Okay, then welcome. I'm very happy to see that many of you participating today. Very happy to, together with Roxy Jackson and Damiano Varagnolo, to run this workshop or tutorial for you. And it's going to be about girls in control, or rather a user's guide on how to prepare, organize, and run a girls in control workshop. If you want to contact us, if you don't know us personally, then you can use this email address that you see at the bottom there, gig@ifac-control.org. And if you already know one of us, then of course you can also contact us directly if you prefer that. My name is Steffi. I am a professor at TU Berlin. Before I was in Magdeburg, so in case you're a bit confused, because in the announcement for the tutorial it said Magdeburg, then don't worry about it. I just changed affiliation, but it's still the same. Roxy, Damiano, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Roxy, please.
Sure. Hey, I'm Roxy. I'm a PhD student at TU Berlin, and I also recently changed from Magdeburg University. And yeah, I've been involved with developing the materials from the very beginning of Girls in Control.
And I am Damiano Varagnolo. I'm a professor at NTNU, Trondheim. And I've been involved almost from the beginning, even if I think I've got a 2 or 3 months delay since Steffi and Roxanne started. And thanks for being here, people.
Okay, then let's get started straight away. Let's see how I can, oh, I have to click on the arrows. All right, this is the overview of today. It basically follows the same overview that you've seen at the announcement. So we are at the introduction, and I'll continue with the introduction by giving you a small timeline of how the workshop came to be, and then talk a bit about why it's girls in control. And then Roxy and Damiano will take over and lead you through the remaining parts of the workshop. And of course, there's going to be plenty of time at the end to ask questions and discuss. Okay, so let's give you a small history of why we are here, or how this all came to be. In October 2019, I met Margaret Bauer. I don't know how many of you know her, but we met at ACE in Philadelphia and had the spontaneous idea to organize a workshop for girls for IFAC 2020 that was supposed to be held in Berlin. Needless to say that we were planning for a presence, like a physical workshop, because we're also planning for physical conferences at that stage. And we were planning on using line following robots and maybe invite 20 girls from Berlin and surrounding areas. Then, of course, as you all know, what happened is that COVID hit us over all the world, I guess. And in April, not only we had to decide to go virtual for IFAC 2020, but also to convert the workshop for the girls to an online format. We were a bit hesitant to do that, but then we said, okay, why not? And in May, we decided to go ahead. And because Margaret at that time was a professor in South Africa, we decided that if it's all virtual, it doesn't really make a difference from where kids can join. And we quickly decided to run the workshop in English and in German. And Roxy joined the crew to help us out with the English as a native speaker and enthusiastic supporter. We shared the idea with other colleagues, including Damiano, and quickly some others joined. And already in July, so just 2 or 3 months later, we held the first workshop alongside IFAC, and we already had 6 languages. So along English and German, also Italian, French, Norwegian, and Portuguese. At that stage, it was actually supposed to be just this one workshop, but it went well and had a lot of positive, we got a lot of positive reactions. So we decided to offer it a second time, because also, as Damiano and Roxy will show you later, once you have the material, there's no need to, there's not that much work to be done to run it again. So it was quite much less effort to run the workshop again in December for CDC, where we already had 17 languages and ran 19 workshops, because the English one was actually 20, because English and Spanish were held multiple times to accommodate for the different time zones. Then in late May, we had another one. There's another workshop at the end of June, and we're also probably planning on some later on that year. Okay, so as I said, it wasn't really planned to run that long, but because it's running well and the kids really enjoy it, we are still here, and we're very happy that you have interest in maybe joining us and learning more about it. And in this workshop, what we'll tell you now is basically everything that you need to know as a first step to maybe run workshops yourself, or to join us, helping us run workshops that we already have, or maybe also extend the material to other languages. And first, what I want to do before we go into the technical details is to motivate why we do girls in control. Well, let's first look at the statistics. I mean, I assume you're all control engineers, or at least you know enough of the control community to be in this meeting. So at least you know what control is. And most likely you come across the gender problem, that we have very few women. In STEM already, it's only 1 out of 3 people in STEM are females, roughly. If you look at technology and engineering, it's already roughly 1 out of 5. Electrical engineering number drops to 1 out of 6 or 7. And in control, we are 1 out of 8. So clearly this is not an ideal number. And why is this not great? Or why do we care? Why are we not happy with this? Well, first of all, because if you don't even know that control exists and you don't consider personally a career in STEM or engineering, you might miss out personally. Engineering jobs are among the safest and the highest income, which brings a bit of flexibility and quality of life that from a personal level is desirable. Apart from this, large parts of society, as you know, are shaped by engineers, and the parts that are shaped by engineers or touched by engineering are growing bigger. And I hope we all agree on the fact that if the large parts of society are influenced by technology, then this technology should also be derived by an equally diverse part of society. So we do need more, we also need a diverse community in control. And of course, we as a community, we miss out. If only 12% of females, or 12% of our control community is female, we most likely miss a lot of female potential engineers that could make a great contribution to controller engineering community that just we don't get to because they don't consider even looking into it. Okay, so I hope you're convinced that this is important. And what we wanted to find out then, okay, if this is important and everybody talks about it and we all know it's super important, why is it then that we don't have that many females? Where is the problem? And because we wanted to start early, we also looked into why do people study what they study, for us as a starting point to understand how we could potentially shape the workshop and help increase the number of students in engineering as a first step. So we found this we found a couple of papers, and I recommend you to have a look at them in more detail. We're happy to share the references later on as well if you like. One of the things that I find very interesting is this paper by Gijsbert Stoot and David Geary about the gender equality paradox in science, technology, engineering, and math education. And they looked into why people, or young teenagers, basically after school, why do they choose to study what they study? And they found that what they study on is based on 3 factors. The first one is their ability. Of course, people are more likely to study an engineering field, for example, if they are good in math and science. Great. But a lot of girls are very good in math and science, yet they don't study engineering or STEM areas. So that's not the first, or that's not the sole driving factor. The second driving factor is attitude. So people are more likely to study what they find interesting and what they find worthwhile. And we'll introduce some results from another study that looks more closely in what girls and boys find more interesting and worthwhile. And also their personal strengths. So for example, if you have a person that's really good in math and in science, but this person is even better in reading and writing, then this person, even though would be perfectly qualified to study engineering, is still more likely on average to study a non-STEM area. And just as a disclaimer here, what I'm saying when I say girls and boys, I am fully aware that not all girls and not all boys work the same way. I might brush over the fact that I mean on average. So this is averages, and there are tendencies, and even though there are individual differences, still those averages make a difference in the whole. That's what we try to understand by reading these papers. Okay, so we know that these factors drive the decision to study engineering, for example, or to study anything, and for us as engineers, this is important. We can't or don't want to change necessarily the personal strengths of students. I mean, if they're good in reading and writing, I don't want them to get worse just so that they study engineering. Okay, that's cool if they're good in that as well. I can change their ability to a small bit by having a 2-hour workshop. I can show them that they can do it, and I can teach them a bit, but I can't change much of how good they are in math and in science, but I can influence their attitude. And by tinkering their interest, maybe they will have they'll spend more time in studying those things, and that will also increase their ability. So that's something where we can enter. We also looked into how do kids perceive science and tech, and we came across this very interesting project called the ROSE project. And this report here, written by Heuberg and Schreiner, is a very worthwhile summary of their findings. So what they did is they collected data about perceptions from 15-year-old people, girls and boys, teenagers, and compared that among different countries. So they had, on the one end, Nordic countries like Norway, Finland, Sweden, European countries, Spain, but also countries in Asia, for example, compared among between females and males in this age group between different countries, and also compared that to another study where they asked adults from those countries similar questions to understand where there are discrepancies. And here are some of the key findings that we think are interesting and worthwhile for this project. They asked them if they agree with the following: science and technology make our lives healthier, easier, and more comfortable and more interesting. Or if they agree also on the benefits of science are greater than the harmful effects that they could have. And what was interesting is that among the different countries, the adults mostly agreed, and there were also no noticeable significant difference between women and men. But the young people, the 15-year-olds, were more skeptic towards this, and especially the girls. So the 15-year-old girls are less likely to agree to those, and that might give a hint on why they're maybe not studying then, if they don't think that science and technology are worthwhile and are doubtful if the benefits are greater than the harmful effects. They also looked at how kids perceive school science, and the results are shocking. They show that school science on average are not popular. They don't show job opportunities. They don't show how this all school science stuff is important for career or life or making the world a better place. So if we want to get more kids into STEM, maybe school science as it is right now is not the most efficient way of doing it. And what was even less good was that the more developed the countries were, the less the overall interest was. So in some Asian countries or some countries that were less developed, the interest was still very high. But as soon as countries develop more, it seems that the interest among the 15-year-olds in school science drops as well, which is devastating, really. And then they looked also into, okay, if school science is not interesting, what is interesting for those kids? Where can we maybe have a starting point? And they found that there's quite a difference between what boys and girls find interesting, again, on average. And boys, on average, are interested in the following thing: the technical, mechanic, electrical, violent, explosive. So if we want to attract boys on average, we have a good way of doing this by focusing on the technical content itself. But those things are not so interesting on average for girls. So if we would focus in our outreach activity outreach activities specifically on the technical stuff without anything around it, there's a high chance that girls would not find that interesting. But what girls find interesting on average more than boys is anything related to health and medicine, beauty, how our human body works, aesthetics, ethics, speculation, and even paranormal. So we can't leverage on all of those things, but helping others or health and medicine might be an interesting part of entering if we can connect them to engineering and show that these areas can be, you can work on those areas or benefit health of others by becoming an engineer, for example. And there's one thing that everybody finds interesting, or that at least has a high interest both in girls and in boys, and this is the possibility of life outside Earth, which is great. So there's one thing that they agree on, and which is cool for everybody. So keep this in mind when Roxy goes through the workshop material with you later on, because it explains why we chose the examples we chose and don't concentrate on a purely technical details, because we believe that this would not be a good point if we wanted to make it interesting for girls. Another entry point would be to talk about environmental questions, because they also found that girls more than boys agree with that people should take care more, should take more care to protect the environment, and that they also believe that they personally can make a difference to a positive difference to protect the environment. When boys are more on average have the opinion that this is exaggerated, so it's not really that bad altogether. And if there is a problem, that then experts should sort it out, and also that those problems can be solved by science and technology, but not necessarily by them. Okay, they trust that this can be solved. But for girls, it's more belief that they individually, they themselves can and must make a difference in order to protect the environment. And they are also more willing on average to pay the price. And that is interesting because it might explain to some extent why there are so more females in some areas that are paid not very well on average. For example, childcare positions and social workers are on average in most countries not paid very well, but there is a higher good in, or nursing, but there's a higher good in helping others. And in those areas you find quite a lot of females compared to males, because they are willing to even take on average less pay and less secure jobs for the greater good. And boys are more reluctant to do this. So again, this is something that we believe we can build on, and maybe show girls that what we do in science or in engineering is actually helping to, can be used to help others to make the world a better place and to save the environment, so that they have this as an entry point to consider engineering and control. So because of that, we shaped the workshop accordingly. We want to show a positive attitude towards science and technology, so they see the possibilities. We want to increase their self-efficacy. So we want to show them that they can do this, and this is no magic, and it's perfectly in the realm of their possibilities. We also want to show that we also want to be role models and show them that it's not impossible to be a female or a woman in engineering. And again, Roxy will tell you more about that. And we want to create a safe space where girls can ask questions and be among themselves and don't fear to be wrong or are afraid to ask questions. And because those stereotypes between what girls and boys, how they see themselves are already quite different for 15-year-olds, as you will see when you look at the Rose Project, we wanted to start as early as possible. So preferably before puberty, before those stereotypes and perceptions are manifested in young people's head. That's why we designed the workshop to start with 10-year-olds till 15. Okay, this is all about why it's on girls. And as I said, Roxy will tell you more about the actual workshop. But before you can run the workshop, you'll need to do some administrational things. And I take you through those boring administrational, but very important things right now. So first thing is you need to choose a date if you want to run a workshop. And all the things that I tell you now will be super obvious, but just keep them in mind. So there is no right or wrong workshop date or time. If you want to run a workshop, of course, it has to suit you. And there are a couple of things that might make it less or more likely that you attract participants. But just consider when there are school holidays. We figured that school holidays make things harder because kids travel, and especially during the summer, they maybe are a bit worn out after online teaching. So they're less likely to join, probably. Public holidays are not a great thing either. So for example, we had one workshop that was very close to the national holiday in France, and that worked really bad for the French team. In Germany, for example, the public holidays, not a thing we greatly celebrate, so probably would work for us. But in case you want to run a workshop in your community, just consider this if this is more a pro or con for you. Seasons also play a role. So for example, in the Nordic countries, as soon as summer comes in June, people don't want to be inside. So don't try to do a workshop in Sweden in July, right? Just as a tip. Again, might be different for you, but consider it. And of course, find a suitable time zone and time of the day, especially for English. We were always careful to choose times. We actually chose 2 different times so that kids from different parts of the world can join. If you run it in a community or you want to attract kids from a pretty defined area and the time zone is not a problem, then it might not be an issue for you. Okay, so again, there's no right or wrong. Just keep this in mind and choose a date if you run a workshop. And before or until now, we always run workshops in coordination with big conferences. That was a practical reason because we needed the Zoom licenses to run the workshops. But, and you might think, why am I talking about this date thing? Because the conference dates are set. But we have now acquired our own Zoom licenses for Girls in Control. So if you want to run a workshop and you don't have a Zoom license and you want to run it completely independent from a big conference, just contact us and we'll help you out. So you don't have to choose a date in accordance with the conference. If you want to run one in November, we help you out. Okay, also now you've set a date, and before you can start with the material, you also need to advertise the workshop in order to attract participants. And this is actually what we found quite a hard bit. So here are a couple of things you can do to attract participants. First thing is a personal network. This will most likely work well, especially for the first workshop. So if you have friends or acquaintances, neighbors, or whatever who are interested, then of course contact them. But depending on your social network or your personal network, that might not be very large, and you can only reach so far. But social media and email work well here. You can also reach out to your professional network. Damiano, for example, was very successful for the Italian workshop to send an email to all the colleagues at some Italian universities. And I don't mean only colleagues in control or only scientific staff, but they reached out to everybody in the entire university. And of course, there are many parents. And so because you don't want the colleagues to join, you want their kids to join, their daughters. So the more people you join, you reach, you have a higher chance of attracting kids as well. That is not possible for everybody, but if you can do it, that will be very effective. And of course, you can use LinkedIn, even though we found LinkedIn to be of limited, it didn't work very, very well to attract participants. You can, and that actually works very asymmetrically, contact teachers in schools directly. It's a bit of a 90-10 problem because only 10% roughly of the teachers actually forward the information to their students. But then from those 10% of the teachers, you get 90% of the participants. So it's a bit of hit and miss. And it's, even if you ask, for example, colleagues or other teachers to forward it to other teachers and students, only very few do it. So that's why it's this asymmetric problem. And you can't judge in advance how many it's going to be. Sometimes it works out really well, and all of a sudden you get 40 applicants or 40 registrations, and sometimes it doesn't work so well and you get like 5. It's really hard to tell, but those are things you can do if you want to reach more kids. You can also leverage on professional conferences, as I said, and before we did this because we held the workshops in accordance with professional conferences, but there you mostly reach adults again, because in a community like us, we have adults joining conferences. So it works so-so, I would say. Okay, so all those things are possible. And depending on how you want to do it, some things might work better or not. But again, advertisement is an important bit to do. So keep this in mind when you set up a workshop. Okay, last bit is the registration and personal data, which is maybe not the most exciting, but extremely important bit to consider. So what I'll say here is mostly based on the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations, which is an EU law. And if you're listening from outside the EU, you might think it's not important, and it's true that the law will not be binding for you, but I think it's a good practice to keep them. And I think those rules are very reasonable because they actually help you to understand what is probably a good practice to follow. So what the basic, and it's also in case you are in the EU, no need to freak out or be afraid. It's actually quite doable. Things that you should follow roughly are the following. Only collect the data that you need. For example, if you don't need their home address because you are doing a virtual workshop, don't collect the home address. If you don't need to know if they have siblings, of course, then of course you don't collect this information. Pretty straightforward. Also, only use the data that you collect from the kids for the communicated purpose for the workshop. So for example, if you run a workshop, then you don't use the emails later on to send them other things. That comes together with the next part. Only store the personal data for the time you need it. So after the workshop, you should delete the data. What we did is we asked the kids during the workshop at the end if they wanted to, it would be okay if we sent them one more email with their certificate of attendance. And in that email then we wrote, if you want to have further information or if you want to be kept in the loop, if we run a workshop again, please just answer to that. And then we stored the email address of those that answered. Of the others, we didn't. And if you follow this, then you're going to have no problems with GDPR issues. And of course, also get written consent of the parents or the guardians that the kids can join. And the consent form looks like this. This is the general one in English that also exists in other languages, or you might translate it. And what you'll see here is that you get the name, date of birth is important because you need to know the age, and email addresses in order to send them infos. And in case there's technical issues, you might want to have the phone number, but not more than that. And what you'll also see here is that they give us consent that you'll be in the Zoom platform and there might be technical stuff. And there are other girls also joining. What's also super important is this bit here. The kids, or rather the parents, sign that the kids will not take any screenshots to protect the personal data of the other participants. And it's also super important that you don't do this either. That brings me to my last slide. Super important issues are, and we very, very strongly suggest this, not to take screenshots, not even by you. The kids sign on the registration form that they don't do it, and you shouldn't do it either. I know that some people do it. I wonder why. Really ask yourself, if you want to take a screenshot, why? Do you need proof that you ran the workshop? Well, who's not going to believe it? And can't you prove that you ran the workshop without taking a screenshot? Okay, so there is, and that could otherwise could create problems, even if you as an instructor take one. And sadly, also, we strongly recommend to not have any adults in the workshops apart from the people that are instructing and volunteering to run the workshop. Why is that? Well, because imagine your kid is in a workshop of people that you don't know, and there are other adults in the session that never say a word, maybe have their camera turned off, have their microphone turned off. They're just supposedly watching at all the kids following the workshop, having the video on. I think there will be many people that don't think this is okay, or at least it could raise an eyebrow. And even if you as an instructor know those people and you know why they want to be there, and they're perfectly fine, the kids and the adults, the kids and the parents of the kids participating will not necessarily know that. And it could come across the wrong way, and we want to avoid that. So in order to not jeopardize the whole mission, we strongly recommend not to have them in. Okay, and there are formats like this here today where adults like you can learn about it. And another option would be, if they are a colleague, then give them a small task so they become part of the team running the workshop. That is also an option that you can consider. Okay, that was me. That was long enough. Thank you very much, everybody. I will hand over to Roxy then.
Great, thanks. I'll just share my screen. And so now we're going to talk about the workshop time plan. And within that, I'm also going to introduce the workshop material. Okay, so there is a little bit of pre-workshop administration that you have to think about. And I've put here that it's minutes 60 to 0. So about an hour before the workshop, you probably need to open up your Zoom session and have some time for girls to come in and ask questions. And they can be technical questions, or they might just be administrative questions. So technical questions about how to use Zoom, or they may just be the girl informing you that they have to leave an hour early. And this gives them time just to have a conversation and introduce themselves before the workshop starts. Additionally, before the workshop, it is expected that we send them some information on how to use Zoom, a manual on the basics of Scratch, and also a preliminary Scratch file, which I will show you later on. Another thing that I've done in the past is I've given a 1-hour session exactly 24 hours before the workshop, and this gives them even more time to ask questions. So for people who haven't used Zoom before and are a little bit stressed about that, then it gives them a time to log on and you can talk them through the different functionalities of Zoom. But in my experience, the age group that we're targeting is very technical literate. So they find Zoom, even if they haven't used it before, very intuitive. Okay, so once the workshop actually starts, you can spend about 5 to 10 minutes making introductions and discussing what the expectations of the workshop are. So you should introduce yourself as well as the people who are helping you run the workshop, so the other volunteers. And you should also tell them what the expectations are in terms of the privacy that Steffi just mentioned. So not to take screenshots, but also just to be nice to each other, a standard code of conduct for these kinds of events. On top of that, you should also mention what our expectations are of them throughout the workshop, or what they expect us to teach them. So this is that we don't expect that they know anything about control. So it's a good time to reassure them that we're going to go through what control is from the very beginning. And also they don't need to have any experience in using Scratch or any programming language, because we also give options for that throughout the workshop. I think that it's also really good here to provide a little bit of a motivation behind the workshop and why it's girls in control. Of course, you don't have to go into great detail about what the gender gap actually is in STEM, but I think it's also good to mention that in some areas of STEM, there aren't that many women, and that's changing. And we're creating part of that change. And we would just love to see more girls in STEM in the future. I would also like to say, so when you introduce yourself, if you have maybe 10 or less girls, then of course they can introduce themselves. But if you have more than that, then it becomes a little bit time consuming and a little bit messy. And what I have done in the past with around 50 participants is I read out which country they were in, and then they got to wave their hands or unmute themselves when I read out their country. And this just gives them a little bit of a participation so that they also get an opportunity to introduce themselves a little bit. So then we get stuck straight into content. And first of all, we discuss well, what is control? Because they haven't seen it before. And if you are creating your own material in your own language, this is one of the tasks that you will have to address. And it's creating a voiceover in your language for the video that I'm about to show you. So I would like to point out beforehand, so just notice that we don't use any words. Everything that we have in the video is visual. So the only task is to create a voiceover for the video in your own language. So let's play that.
Hello, and welcome to the Girls in Control workshop. My name is Roxy, and today we will learn about automation and control. In fact, we will see how elements of control are simple and all around us. Before we get too carried away, let's discuss the purpose of today and what we plan to achieve. We want to understand the world around us a little better by seeing the usefulness of automation. But most of all, we want to have fun. Hopefully, you can even use some of the ideas and concepts we discussed today in future projects. Today, you'll be designing and making your own game of chase, similar to the one you see playing here. After designing your game, you can keep adapting and fiddling with ideas to make the game resemble reality a little better. We also want to learn a little bit about control. But what does control actually mean? To find out, let's discuss a simple example of control in our daily lives, which I'm sure you are all familiar with. Maybe you want to take a shower. You enter the shower and turn on the water and test the temperature of the water with your hand. Is it too cold? Turn the knob to make it warmer. Did you turn it too far? Is it too warm? We don't want to burn ourselves. Then, likewise, we can readjust the knob until the temperature is just right. Now, we can adjust the flow of water. We don't want the water to trickle. You can increase the flow of water until you are comfortable with the water pressure. Are you happy? Well done. You have controlled a shower. Now, let's be a little more serious and look at this control example. We're going to build what we call a block diagram. A block diagram is a graph of how things interact. The task is to have a comfortable shower. With your hand, you can feel the temperature of the water. So your hand is like a temperature sensor. You process this information in your brain, a little like a computer. We call this the controller. It helps us make decisions. Then you adjust the knob depending if the water is too hot or too cold. We call this an actuator. It is the mechanism that actually creates change in the system. In turn, the temperature of the water is controlled. This is an example of a feedback cycle in control. Because under the shower, you can feel the temperature and you continuously adjust the temperature until you are comfortable. Is control clear now? Let's make another example to make it extra clear. Consider that we are playing a game of chase. In a game of chase, one person is it and runs after the other players, trying to tag them. The first person tagged is the new person who is it, and the game continues. Now, imagine that you are it and chasing someone. Think about what your sensor is, or how you know where the other person is. What is your controller? In other words, what do you use to make decisions? And what is your actuator? How do you get to other people? Think about it and discuss with the other people in your group.
Okay, so that was the first video. And I would also, if you are making the content in your own language, I would also like to point out that we actually give you everything that you need. So this includes a script in English, which you can translate into your own language so that you can create the voiceover. But we also give you all of the content that you need for the video. And we even can provide help in making the video fit to the voiceover. So editing the whole thing together. And all of this we can share to you, and it's all open source material. So after this video, it's a nice time to create discussion within the girls. So re-ask the questions that were proposed at the end of the video. So this is, what is the sensor, what is the controller, and what is the actuator? And from our experience, after a little bit of discussion, they always get to the right answer. What you can also do at this time is propose another example of control that they can try out at their desk. And so we use examples such as trying to balance a pen on your hand, which is a little difficult, but also you could ask them to stand up and try and balance on one leg, and then see whether they can once again identify the sensor, controller, and the actuator. You can also ask them to close their eyes while they're trying to balance, and this task leads quite well into the next section, which is where we actually answer the question about control in chase. And we even go through and talk about the importance of each element in the feedback cycle. For this part, you can run this with two different options. So the first option is best for the flow of the content. And what you will do is, first of all, you play the video up until a certain point, and then you open Scratch and load in a file that we have already sent to the kids. And after they've had a little bit of time playing with that, then they come back to the video and we propose a new problem to them. The second option is best if you have a lot of participants. So the second option is that you play the video, and then you play the entire video, and then you go to Scratch and you show them very slowly how to load a Scratch file into Scratch itself. The reason this is best for many participants is because this is where we start to have a lot of technical issues, and with girls not having downloaded the Scratch file beforehand, struggling to open the Scratch file on their computer, and not following exactly how you load a Scratch file into the Scratch web browser. But here we're going to go through option one, and I will open the second video.
Let's see what chasing has to do with control. For this, again, we will build a block diagram. Now, the task is to follow and chase after another person. With your eyes, you can see where the other person is. You then use your brain to decide which direction and how fast to run. And you use your legs to run in the direction of the other person. This is yet another control loop that is familiar to you. To understand why we need all of these parts, let's see what happens if some part of the feedback cycle is missing. First, what happens without a sensor? Let's look at what happens when your eyes are blindfolded. Have you ever tried to chase someone with your eyes blindfolded? Without sight, you have no way of knowing where the other person is. You can run around, but only in random directions, and hope to find your target. But, as you see, this is not very effective. So we obviously need some way of knowing where the other person is. Now, without actuation, what happens if our legs are tied together? Without our legs to run after the other person, we know where we need to go, but we can't move. So of course, we need a way to move towards the other person. Finally, what happens if we don't have a brain to control our decisions? Without a brain to make decisions, we just run around randomly without purpose. Like a zombie. Make sure you don't leave your brain behind. You can see that we need it for the control system. In this experiment, we have seen the role of each block. Clearly, all of them are necessary in playing a game of chase. You see here a game of chase where you can press the arrow keys on your keyboard and chase the ball as it moves randomly around the screen. In this example, the task is to chase the ball and earn points. To recall our feedback cycle.
Okay, so this is where we pause the video and then we can go to Scratch, and I have previously loaded in this game, and all you need to do is press the flag up here, and then you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to chase the ball around. And every time you earn a point, it also makes a sound. And so this just gives a little bit of time to play the game and for them to work out what's happening and how to interact with Scratch before we move on to the second part of the video.
We are using our eyes as the sensor and our brain to control our fingers, pressing the arrow keys, which moves the character around the screen so that we can earn points. But if we want to earn as many points as possible without getting too tired from playing all day or for getting in trouble for being on the computer for too long, then how about we find a way for the character to chase the ball without our input? In other words, we no longer want to use our eyes, our brains, or the arrow keys on our keyboard as part of the feedback cycle. Instead, we want to create a system that works without our input. We call this automation because we want it to happen autonomously without you in the control loop. If we are not in the control loop, then what goes here? This is the task we give to you. It is your turn to create your own automated game of chase. To start, make up your own story of chase. Choose your own characters and use Scratch to implement your design that is totally automated. And of course, we are here to help you. So get creating.
Okay, so now this leads really well into starting to program in Scratch. And in this part, what you need to do first of all is, since we assume that they've never used Scratch before and they've never programmed before, then it's really nice for you to give an introduction to the preliminaries of Scratch. And we're actually going to go through a little bit on how to use Scratch right after we go through the time plan. So what you should do is you should introduce them to the blocks, introduce them to how to work out how the blocks work, how to put in different characters, and how to construct logic, and then put that into code. So what I normally do is I show them very slowly how to make a character do a random walk around the screen. So this is the character that we want to chase. So we show them that part and then give them some hints towards what they should do so that they can control the person who's chasing. If you have a larger group and you also have a group which has different levels of ability, so when I say this, I mean in terms of age and also in terms of programming experience, then it could be nice here to actually separate the group. And you do this by creating a breakout room in Zoom. And Damiano, if you don't know what this is, Damiano will show this to you afterwards. So in the breakout room, this is where one of the volunteers goes, and they can actually run through how to program an automated game in Chase and really go through it very slowly. So not giving them the answers, but prompting the discussion and then showing them how to put their logic into code. And then in the main session, that's where you can answer other questions. So girls who don't have problems with programming, they can have a go at trying to do it themselves. And then you can answer individual questions when they come up. And then if someone is in the breakout room and they decide that it's going a little bit too slow paced for them and actually they could do this themselves, then they can exit the breakout room and come back to the main session. And then slowly everyone will start to come back to the main session. It's also nice here to mention that at this time, it's a good exit point. So if a girl she's not interested in doing anymore, or if she has somewhere else to be, then at this stage, it's a nice time for them to exit. From my experience, I've given this option, but no one has left. So normally they're still pretty eager to learn by this point, but it's about halfway through. So afterwards, we give them a little bit of a break, and it's nice for them to go and grab something to eat while we give them a brief look into being a control engineer. So this is the part where we actually show representation of women in control engineering. So it's best to invite another female control engineer who you think is a great role model. Or if you don't have access to this, another female working in STEM, for example. And you invite them to come and talk about how passionate they are about their work. And also show them explain to them how maybe they ended up getting into STEM themselves. Or, and also just showing how normal controls engineers are. So in the past, we've had people introduce their pets or their partners, and it's just really nice to have a very casual feeling about the whole thing, just so that they can be a really relatable person to the girls. Otherwise, if you can't have a an external person come and join the session, then maybe you can also just talk about what you do in your work each day, and you can do this yourself. I personally think that by this stage, since my voice is also in the voiceovers for the videos, I like to give a little bit of a break from my voice for a little while. Okay, so then we go back into more programming time. So by this stage, most people should have the most basic version of a game of chess in Scratch. And so then we give a little bit more time, so about half an hour or so, for the girls to think about how they could make their problem more complex, or how to add more features to their game. So this could be in the form of a scoring system. It could also be that once you're chasing someone and then you tip them, then you switch places and the other person starts chasing. You could also have another character which you try to avoid. So if you interact with this third character, then the game ends, for example. So this means that a lot of the girls will start working on their own problem. And this is where you need to give a lot more hands-on support. So you and the other volunteers that you're with will have to give more time, and you'll have to answer more questions. And it's a good time to use more breakout rooms to answer specific questions to a group of people. And also you'll be doing a lot of sharing your screen and explaining how logic works in Scratch. It's also really nice to let the girls share their solutions at this time. So by this stage, they all have a chase game, but they also have their own individual complexity. So it's really nice for them to show how they did it in Scratch and also what their idea was. Afterwards, then we start to wrap up the workshop. And this is where we discuss how the game that they have developed in Scratch, how it resembles reality. And we start to prompt a few questions which lead into the third and final video. So we ask what else we could do in our game to make it resemble reality a little better. And this is in terms of how fast you run towards the person you're trying to catch, or whether you chase directly after them. And I'll show you the last video.
Now that you have made your own totally automated game of chess, let's talk about some ways that you can improve your design. First, let's talk about how fast we should run during a game of chess. What happens if you run as fast as you can while you approach the other person? Ouch! You run into the other person. That's going to hurt. Or you might just run straight past them. So what is a better way to play chess? If the other person is far away, we should run as fast as we can. As we approach, we should slow down a little bit so that we can tip them without running into them or past them. This is an example of a different control strategy. We call it proportional control, or P control, because how fast we run changes depending on how far away we are from the target. This is real control engineering. P control is the most common control technique used worldwide. Another way to improve your performance in a game of chess is not to run directly after the other person, but instead to run to where you think they will be. This is how soccer players chase a soccer ball. It is a faster and more efficient way to play chase. This is another and even smarter control technique called feed-forward control. Maybe you can think of even more ways to play chase a little better. Wow, today you automated your own game of chase. You all did a great job and we had a fantastic time helping you. We hope you did too. Now that you know about feedback and control, see if you can find other examples in your daily life. Maybe you think of more things that could be automated, or you think of another game that can be implemented in Scratch. We hope you have a great day.
Okay, so after we've shown the final video, we're obviously trying to wrap things up. However, in the past, we've seen that this actually gives a new wave of motivation to the girls, and sometimes they want to stay a little bit longer and try and program something that's a little bit smarter in terms of the control strategy. And of course, if you also have the motivation and time, then we encourage you to stay and continue to spend some time programming with the girls. However, if not, then at this stage, you're probably approaching the 2-hour mark, and it's a good time just to finish up. Of course, you should thank them for attending and ask for feedback. You can do this in the form of a survey also, but it's also just nice to let them unmute themselves and let you know how they found the workshop. Also, you should let them know that you're going to send them a certificate of participation. And like Steffi mentioned earlier, this gives them an opportunity to let you know whether they would like to be informed about future workshops, because we also have the opportunity for them to do an advanced workshop in some languages. So that's all of the workshop time plan and the workshop material. And now I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to how to use Scratch. And we're going to just implement the most basic version of a game of chase with a scoring system. And this gives you a bit of an insight into just how simple programming in Scratch is. So to start in Scratch, so you come to the Scratch website, which is scratch.mit.edu. And there is an option over here to sign in and create an account. However, that is not necessary. You are not able to, however, to save your work unless you save your project to your computer. So if you're logged in, then if you create a new project, then it's saved to your account. But if you're not logged in, then you will have to consciously save the project to your computer if you want to keep it. So we go to the Create button and we create a new project. Here, there are a lot of tutorials that you can go through in Scratch. They have a lot of really good resources already. And they also, in this world option, they have all of the different languages. So I think they have over 50 languages that you can choose from. And this is one of the reasons that we find Scratch really useful. So I will obviously stay with English. And so if you want to open a Scratch file, so since we actually send the girls a Scratch file, the chase with arrows, they will need to load that into Scratch themselves. So you need to go to load from your computer, and then you need to navigate to wherever your file is. And you load it up, and then if you want to play the game, then you can enlarge it and of course start playing. If you want to make a new project, then you go to the new. Right. So Scratch will always start with an automatic cat sprite. If you don't want that, then you can just delete it down here. First of all, we should make a background. So the background menu is right down here in the bottom right. And we can choose whatever we like. So I might choose a castle. And then we need to choose 2 characters, and they're called sprites. So I have a castle, and then I will choose a witch. And I will make my witch chase her broom. So by doing a different example to what they see in the videos, this shows them that they can come up with whatever story they would like to do themselves. So over here is where we have a lot of the important things that we care about. So here in this tab, we have all of the code. If you want to change how something looks, so if I want to change the angle of my broom, then you need to go to this costumes tab, and then you can change the way that it actually looks. So I'm going to make it be on a little bit of an angle or something. Okay. So the code that you can use in Scratch, they have a lot of really good blocks that you can already use. And it's already broken up into different sections. And the things that the girls are probably going to care about the most during the workshop are the motion blocks, the events blocks, the control blocks, and also the sensing and maybe also variables. So creating your own variables. So when you're programming in Scratch, you kind of have local code. So if I want to program something that the witch does, then I need to make sure that I have her selected and I'm programming in her section. And likewise with the broom will come up. So first of all, we should start with showing how to make an object do a random walk around the screen. And this is the object that we want to chase. So to do this, there are a few different things that you can do in the motion section, and you can go to a random position. So to test what a block does in Scratch, you can just click on it and it will show you what happens. So this is just jumping to a random position, which is not so nice, doesn't look the best. They also have an option which is glide. So you can also glide to a random position. And this one looks better, so we're going to use that. The next thing that you want to motivate is the fact that you don't want to have to click on it every single time you run the code. So this way, we actually put in a loop. So in the control section, you can put in a forever loop. And then if I press this section, then it continues to do it forever. You can also make it so that it starts when you press the the green flag. And this is in the events section. So you can add in like a trigger that when the flag is pressed, then you continuously move to a random position around the screen. And this is all you need to do for showing how to have an object to chase. So like I said, in the time plan, this is normally where we show everyone this part, and then afterwards is where we start to maybe separate the groups into people who haven't programmed before and people who have programming or Scratch experience when they change to programming the witch. So by selecting the witch, then we can go through how we want her to chase the broom. And once again, you can use this, you can use a bit of a cheat because you can actually use that you want her to go to the broom. So you can just click on it and she goes directly to the broom. But that's a little bit unrealistic. So we can again use this glide option, and you can get her to glide towards the broom. So it looks a little bit better. I think that this is also when you should start to talk about, actuation and everything again. So you talk about which blocks actually create actuation. If you want to add something, I found that if you want to add something that is kind of like a sensor, then you can add in this point towards. So this kind of demonstrates, so if I move the broom again, then point towards kind of shows that she sees where the broom is. And this is just a simple way to show that. Then once again, you can put all of this into a forever loop with an event trigger. And she kind of chases the broom around the screen. There are, of course, different things that you can do. You can change how fast things glide. You can put in delays, and you can try a few different things to make it look a little less chaotic. However, the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to add in a score variable. So this is normally the complexity option that most people want to add, is adding in a score. So whenever she's overlapping with the broom or she's caught up to the broom, then you increase her score. And to do this, you go to the variables option and you go to make a new variable. So now that you have this variable, it comes up on the screen over here. And if you don't want it to show on the screen, then you can untick this box in the variables section. But we do want that to be there. So now logic starts to get a little bit more difficult. And so this is probably where you might need to explain the function of a conditional statement, or like an if-then statement. Because, so what we want is if the witch has caught up to the broom, then we want to increase the score. So sensing is where you find the element that you need. So if here you have that the witch is touching the broom, then you go to your variable section and you can change the score by 1. And that is the easiest way to get your score happening. And that was just a very basic introduction to Scratch, but I hope that it gives you an idea of why we use Scratch and just how powerful Scratch can actually be to teach control in these examples. I will now let Damiano talk about how to use Zoom and how to create content in your own language.
Or if you have a question now, then something's unclear about Scratch, something fresh in your head, then also please take the opportunity to ask if you like before Damiano takes over. Has any of you worked with Scratch before? All right, well then, I guess if there's no questions at the moment, of course, if you have questions later on, then you can ask all of us later. Then we'll hand over to Damiano then.
Perfect. Thanks, people. Then I should be able to share my screen. I think the entire screen, and you see everything, true? And I also do. I hide the stuff here. You hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so now we do three things basically. Maybe I do this. Perfect. Experience from past workshops, a little bit of insights of what we learn and what we experience as instructors, and also for the girls. How to use Zoom, even if I assume that probably you already know how to use Zoom, but how to do it for the girls in control workshops, and a little bit on how to create the material in a new language. Because we provide information, we provide everything. Of course, if you want to do a new language, you need to have a little bit of instructions. We go through also how to modify the stuff that we give to you to do your own. It shouldn't take too much time. Let's see. The first thing is that we had quite a few workshops. We had quite a few ladies participating up to now. I think that we passed the 500 ladies up to now, girls.
Oh yeah, absolutely. First workshop, we had 90. Second workshop in December, we had 350 to 400. And the workshop in May now was 300 roughly, or 400. So I think very soon we're going to have 1,000 in total. Yeah.
And we basically have all this information here is from questionnaire that we ask to all the ladies, independently of the age, independently of the language. So this is kind of aggregating everything. I'm not showing anything disaggregated by language, by age, but the trends are those ones. The ladies tend to think that they are fun, that things are fun. There's, of course, some people that do not find it very funny, very interesting, because maybe they already know Scratch and they find it kind of slow. We have the perception that it tends to be easy to follow. So as you see here, the vast majority of people finds that it's easy to follow, but we have some few cases. It might happen on a population of 20 persons that there's one lady that has got some difficulties in following the things. Typically, it's because it's due to illiteracy from a digital perspective. So it might be that some parents are pushing the ladies and they find kind of a little bit of resistance because they do not know how to open emails, they do not know how to open and use Zoom, things like that. We also find that it's there's questions. Are there questions? No. A lot of people found it pleasant. In which sense? They found it that the environment was protective, was supportive, and was something that wasn't like school trying to push some information on them, but was more a situation for which they could do something in a relaxed way. Okay. Note though that we are, in a certain sense, we've got a statistical bias here, because somehow those are the ladies that completed the workshop. And we were in the workshop, there are some exit points, and we say to the ladies, if you want to exit now because you have to go away, because you are bored, please do so. So in a certain sense, that population there, we do not measure it. We are a little bit optimistic. But at least the people that finished it found it pleasant. I think this is because up to now we have been a group of instructioners. How do you say, Steffi, Roxy? People that are the persons teaching, instructors.
Yeah,
sorry,
I think so.
That are volunteers, that find this initiative important, that find it motivating to do it. And of course, in a certain sense, the instructors are well-posed. There's no people that here is forced to do this. So I think this contributes quite a lot in making things pleasant. A suggestion that I would give to the people that want to do a workshop by their own, do not force your PhD students to participate if they do not feel like, okay, because this might affect the mood. A lot of people find it exciting. A lot of ladies weren't knowledgeable about Scratch, didn't know how to do programming. Finding a way of programming using computers in a completely different way, I think was the most exciting part for a lot of ladies. And of course, there's a little bit of statistical deviations here and there. Quite a lot of people wanted to do it again. Indeed, we have actually a version 2, an advanced version of the workshop that we run only once for now because we developed the material some few months ago. And a lot of the people that are, at least for the Italian workshop, that participated in the advanced workshop was people that was already doing in the beginners one. So this doesn't seem that people were saying that they agree on wanting to do it again only for making us happy, but actually they wanted to do it. So good signs here. The experience is that in a certain sense, it tends to be positive for the ladies. It tends to be positive also for the instructors. There are, though, some issues. First of all, actually no issues with learning control concepts. P, controllers, all of them get it. We do it very graphically, as you saw up to now. So it's actually kind of easy to relate it from an intuitive perspective to reality. But it looks like that understanding what is a sensor, what is an actuator, what is a kind of intelligence behind control, they get it. They get it. It's ladies from 10 to 15. Okay, they get it. The biggest issues that we had are technical. They do not know how to use the computer, basically. Typically, the audio and video, even if the video, sometimes they do not open it, tend to be present. I would say 20% of the population, every workshop has got some issues there. Quite a few are not able to open Scratch files. They never used that platform. They try to open the files with like a PDF editor, some Acrobat. They download the Scratch files and they try to open it in a strange way. They do not get immediately how to do it. And especially the emails with the instructions, because typically they are emails of the parents. The ladies do not use them. They do not know how to open the mails of the parents, and they kind of get a little bit lost. Because in those situations is the situation for which the parents are signing them up. Okay. Related to this technical issue here, I think that our experience suggests that whenever you start the workshop, you give some lead time that people can start slightly before. As soon as a participant starts, you make that participant open Scratch, open the instructions, do everything. So in a certain sense, whenever you start, let's say that you start at 3, already from 2:45, you start solving those issues here. My experience is that this can save the day. We had one occasion in the Italian workshop where we lost basically half an hour solving small issues, and that was a little bit unfortunate, I would say. Another issue that is big, and this is in a certain sense natural, given the fact that we reach everybody. There's ladies that know how to program Scratch because they do it at school. There's ladies that do not even know how to open a browser. Those very different levels of pre-knowledge, we are all instructors here. We all teach at university. We know that it's a mess. We are kind of going towards having slightly smaller cohorts, so 10 to 12, 13 to 15, that kind of helps a little bit on uniforming, but also trying to have 2 types of workshop, basic and advanced, so that in a certain sense we have a finer granular division of the pre-knowledge of the ladies, and hopefully it will be more smooth, let's say, especially for the ladies that do know how to program in Scratch and they feel like it's kind of boring. Okay. Other things, instructions might not have been read. Some kids might be a little bit, let's say, more demanding than others. I think that all instructors found some people kind of being more demanding than others. These age differences that I was saying before, and parents that ghost code. It happens sometimes that there's the parent behind and they kind of are doing things for the kids, or that they are the parents behind and they want to help and they mess up with the kid because they tell the kid, do this, do this, do that, do that. And then of course it's kind of a bit bothering for everybody. So we still have to find a way of solving this issue of the parents. Maybe we shall be a little bit more clear in the future. But anyway, we are also learning by doing, in a certain sense. First time that we ran the workshop was completely blind. Okay, questions about this? I do not see the thing for raised hands. Are there questions, Roxy, Steffi?
I keep an eye on the chat, and if there is one, I interrupt you.
Okay, let me know. Let's go then to how to use Zoom. Actually, you can do it with any platform. You can also use Google Meets. You can do whatever you want. It's not that you need Zoom by default. Up to now, we have been using Zoom because we have the instructions. Yes, Steffi?
We have the instructions and we got Zoom licenses. So from now on, if you want to run a workshop virtually and you need a license, you don't have that through university. If you use Zoom, we can help you out with the license. Sorry to interrupt you, Damiano.
No, it's perfect. So in a certain sense, we give you also this is actually courtesy of the IFAC fund that gave us money for this. So if you want to use Zoom, we give you the license, thanks to IFAC.
IFAC Foundation, yes, thank you.
But if you want to do something with your local school and use WhatsApp, maybe WhatsApp, no. But another thing, you are free to do it, okay? The important is that
I ran it at a school here in Berlin in presence. So if you want to run it not in virtual and you meet with the school and you do it locally, if COVID and so on allows it, then of course you don't need Zoom and you're perfectly happy. You should be perfectly happy to go ahead. It doesn't have to be virtual. Indeed.
Absolutely. The important thing is to have some breakout room if you do it digitally. But also if you do in presence, then it would be better to have another person, two instructors at least, so that one can be dedicated to solve issues. So in a certain sense, there will be girls that have got problems, have a way of dealing with those problems. Up to now, we've been using Zoom and breakout rooms. I assume that everybody knows at this point among us how to use breakout rooms. The most important message is be ready to have some person dedicated to solve the small things so that you do not break up the flow of the workshop for 20 ladies because one is having issues. That is a little bit unpleasant. Suggestions: do set up a Zoom so that everybody is co-host from the beginning and share the screens. Very often the ladies may have some curiosity, or not only issues, but also curiosities. What does this do? If you have the possibility of sharing screen is good. Also, another thing that is very important, making the ladies show to the others what they did. Sometimes they create their own backgrounds, they create their own story, they twist a little bit things, and they feel creative and they feel like sharing things. So giving the possibility of giving back in a certain sense to others, we perceive it to be an important thing. So make everybody be able to share not only the screen, but the information with the others. And switch among breakout rooms as they wish. Okay. Okay, shall we go to the new part? We go to the new part. Basically, I do it in this way. So we have a lot of things to do. Maybe this, I put it here, then at this point. Before looking at this screen here, before looking at the screen, look at me. There's several things. There's scratch files, instructions, emails to be sent around, suggestions for people. In a certain sense, a lot of material, like 10, 15 things, losing track of what to do becomes easy. So what we did is to organize kind of a to-do list that we have at every time that we run a workshop for which basically people can say what has been done, what needs to be done. And this is basically an Excel file that we have shared within all the instructors, where people, every team independently somehow manages to do things. So scratch files, overview, various things here are done. There's one thing that is very important, sorry. One big chunk of the material is the videos. The videos, we have the videos, raw videos, without any sound available. But of course, you will need to translate the videos that Roxanne was saying before into your language, if you want to use your language. Of course, if there's somebody that is Italian, there's already the Italian versions. So in case you want to use a language that we already have in the database, perfectly fine, you can already use it. If your language doesn't exist in the database that we have, you need to traduce some stuff. For example,
I will post in the chat the list of the languages for which we already have material.
Excellent.
If you're wondering, I'll just put it there.
Excellent, excellent. Or if you hate, for example, Alessandra Parisio's voice for the Italian and you want to do your own voice, then of course, don't tell Alessandra, but it's gonna be fine. Anyway, so for example, you need to translate the videos. There will be that you need to create from English version the text voiceovers in your language. For example, let's say that at the beginning you will have everything read. Let's assume that you started doing this translation. You might set this up as yellow, okay? And then in a certain sense, the team knows that this is underway. Maybe you did it, then you copy green. And then at this point, everybody knows that this as a task has been done. Then, of course, just for the video, just to make an example, you have to translate in English, record the language, so the voiceover, and then mounting the video. 3 steps. In your team, you will decide who does what, and then, in a certain sense, you modify the situation. And of course, you know that whenever this is done, you have the videos. Okay. Same things happen. Now it's an old one, so we can also leave it as it is. For example, material. We have several things that needs to be translated. First of all, the flyer. The flyer, that is the advertisement that you send around in LinkedIn, via email, via Instagram, whatever. Okay, so we give you the English flyer, you translate it. Then you place it into an Opportunity Drive folder, but you will contact us and we will give you more detailed instructions. Anyway, the important message is this one. If you want to do your own stuff, if there is no material, if you need to create your own material, we have a checklist. We have a checklist that we strongly advise you to follow and to keep updated. Because in this way, somehow you centralize the information of what is the status of the material. Assume that you're in 4, it's kind of a convenient way. And also it's kind of a convenient way to keep working within the whole Girls in Control team, because of course there are synergies and we can help each other. People that speak English often speak also some other language, okay? So, for example, German, Steffi can help with Swedish very well. And maybe there's somebody in the Italian team that speaks also Portuguese, okay? So, in a certain sense, our suggestion would be to reproduce what you have been doing, leverage all the material, all the instructions, all the workflows that we have been doing up to now, and kind of keep in contact because there's synergies. So in a certain sense, summarizing, we have this way of letting people run their own workshop if they want, how much they want, whenever they want, but also kind of keep the work under the umbrella of instructors that help each other and provide support to each other. And with this, I think that I'm done. And then Steph, you take over.
Well, I was just typing, if you are interested in getting access to the material Damiano has been showing, please email us to IFAC-control.org, or just send us an email now. And also this is time to ask questions, share your comments, your opinions, and then just unmute your microphone and go ahead.
There is actually a question in the chat that maybe we should discuss first. So if we want to create new exercises with Scratch, is it possible to send you our material so that you can validate it and give us feedback? My main concern is to create a use case that may be complicated for an introduction to control.
Sorry, Franco, I didn't read I overlooked your message because I was typing all the languages. If I may answer, of course, I mean, you don't, I'm not the one judging what's best, but if you want my opinion, because I might have some more experience than you, then absolutely feel free to share what you have. If you have ideas to make extensions, not only to use for a workshop that you run, but if you're happy to share with us so that others could run it, can use that, we're very happy to hear it and to see it. And if you like feedback, we're happy to share our opinion, of course. What we also didn't show you here was the material for the second advanced workshop. So also in case anybody is interested in that or has other ideas, just get in contact with us. The email address you've seen is gig@. I'll post this in the chat if you want to contact us. But of course, please just also use the opportunity now.
And something that I want to stress, just to kind of remark this, it's not that Steffi, Roxy, and I, we are the leaders and we own this and we will impose some things. We just are the ones that started this, so have most experience on running this. We think that this is not a duty, but something that we should do as control community and have a very democratic way of proposing and sharing material. So it's more initiative that should be distributed where we share things and decide things together. And if somebody wants to do something slightly differently, perfectly fine. The important is to reach out. The important is to promote STEM and make everybody kind of feel like wanting to participate.
Yep. And,
okay, thank you very much.
The only thing that we, as I said earlier, the only thing that we have quite strong opinions about, for the reasons that I explained, is the personal data of the kids and the role of adults, because we are afraid that if somebody does not follow those rules, but hosts the workshop under the umbrella of Girls in Control, that this would not only create potential issues for that person, get that person into trouble, which we do not want you to get into trouble at all. It would also reflect bad on all the other workshops in the other languages, and might be a hindrance to the other volunteers that are struggling hard to attract participants and devoting a lot of their time. So in respect for them and also protect the kids, of course, first and foremost, the two rules that we really strongly feel about are not to handle the personal data very carefully and the role of adults in the workshops. Also, in case you're wondering, of course, as you've seen, we are focusing on girls because we're come from the motivation that we are too few in the control community. But the material, as you've seen, I mean, it could be used for workshops in mixed groups as well. And in some cases, it might be easier to reach more kids overall, including more girls in total, if you reach out to an entire school class. And of course, then it's very difficult to tell the boys to wait in the hall while you run the workshop. And in that case, run it in a mixed group. I don't think that's the main issue, but then having female characters in the video and hopefully also having females helping you to run the workshop, or you are a female yourself, to show that role model part, I think is very powerful. So it's not forbidden to use it for boys, but our aim was to increase the visibility of women and have more girls attracted to it than boys. That's why we did it the way we do. But if you have a local school and you can do it with the entire school class, go for it.
Yes, thank you very much. I had also one question. I am currently based in France, and so should I reach out with the French speaker, or the French, let's say the person that organized the workshops in France? So maybe we can organize some not only virtual but on-site workshops. I could you know, reach out with my universities or something like that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's very appreciated. May I ask where in France you are? In which
I'm in Paris.
Okay, cool, because the volunteers we have at the moment are also in Paris, from what I
Okay.
understand, and they might be very happy to run something locally. And even if they just share their experience, which might be specific for Paris or France, I don't know, might be interesting for you to get in contact with them. So if you like, Franco, just send us an email and I'll put you in contact with the French volunteers.
Okay, I will send you my both two emails, because I'm currently finishing my PhD, so I don't know if my professional email will be will still be okay, because I'm finishing my industrial PhD on
Sure.
3 emails.
Whatever email you give me, I'll put you in contact
Okay.
with the ladies, and you can discuss further with them then.
Okay, thank you very much.
An important thing, there's no need for organizing with 100 students. It might also be 10 people. Okay, so there's no need for doing something huge. Actually, I had once with one Norwegian workshop, there was only one lady that was signed up. They did it in any case, and they said it was excellent, and they really bonded. So if you got like 5 kids, I'm pretty sure that both will be happy. Of course, you got a lower kind of a lower impact, lower outreach, but you will outreach them in a good way. So
yes, we will concentrate on quality, right? Yeah. Thank you.
I also wanted to come back to the content question, and just also point out that so some of the examples that we might use might not translate culturally very well. So for example, with the Brazilian video, we don't have the shower example because showers work differently in Brazil. Well, this is for the Portuguese one, but it was put together by some Brazilian colleagues. And so in that case, we actually used a balancing a stick on your hand example. So if you don't think that the examples that we have in the videos will translate very well into your culture or the language that you are native to, then we're also very happy to brainstorm other examples on how we can adjust it to fit better.
Yeah, and of course you could use the video material already that exists for the stick example, which I think every kid will be able to do. And the advantage of this example is that you can ask them to do it, as Roxy was saying, during the workshop themselves, not just watch it on the video. Yeah.
Yes, because it's really interesting. I mean, the study that from which you started. I mean, you started to build these examples, because it will help also to know which exercise and which subject topic will be more interesting to this kind of stuff.
And I think this is a challenge, because also from my own experience, if we do the examples we use in our lectures are very often the ones that we tune down and to use in different colors to outreach to students. When we, for example, do outreach to high school students in their final 2 years in school in order to tell them that they should come and study our engineering subjects. But very often we take examples there naturally that are very technical. For example, balancing robots or line following robots, which are very useful for the control concepts. And we know that, that's why we use them, and they're very useful. But I wanted to make you aware that even though they're very suitable and useful for the purpose of introducing what control is, they are not very useful to spark interest in females. So that's why we challenge you to think about other examples. And I hope we gave you an introduction of what we think could be examples. If you have other alternatives that you think might work well, we are very happy to hear about it.
Just to complement, I put in the chat one link to this ROSE project. That is an amazing project, actually, that involved millions of kids around the world. That is the project that, in a certain sense, was Steffi was referring to, saying that somehow how the perception works for different cultures and different kids and different.
And I'm pasting the link to the IFAC webpage because IFAC was kind enough to allow us to host some of the material in their cloud and to have a webpage where it's a little bit of explanation of what the workshop is, and also the volunteers that created material, and they're happy for us to share it openly on the web. Those languages are up there. For the other languages that are posted, the material exists. But in order to get access to it, you need to contact me, and I'll put you in contact with the other volunteers so that you can use their material. But if you use, for example, if you want to use German or French or English or Italian or other languages that are on the website, you could also have a look there and just download from there. And we are working on a website more dedicated just to goals of control rather than a sub-page for IFAC at the moment, but that's not ready yet.
Sorry, now the link is the correct one. That one was the EU, it's actually .no. This last link is the correct one to the rules. Sorry, apologize.
Okay. Please don't be shy. Even if you don't have a question, if you have any comments, anything you want to discuss, then please bring it up. I have a request in terms of languages. You've seen we've got 17 languages at the moment, but there are a couple of languages that are very spoken by large communities worldwide for which we do not have a material. For example, Arabic comes to mind here, and other languages. If you want, just Google for most spoken languages in the world, and you see that even in the top 10, we have languages that we don't cover, and Arabic is one of them, for example. So if our Persian is a large community as well that we don't have a material for, a lot of languages mostly spoken in Asia, like Tamil, or languages or spoken in Sri Lanka. I can't remember the name of the Sri Lankan language right now, sorry. But there are so many languages which are spoken by many, many girls and many, many people for which we do not have material, and we don't speak any of them. So we have no hope on producing it ourselves. But if you speak any of the language, any language sufficiently well, or even a native speaker of a language that is not on the list there, then please consider contributing.
With 2 hours of, no, maybe a little bit more, but not too many. 1 day of work, you do the translation of everything.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the presentation. It was really good, and for your passion to really to give away your knowledge. Yeah, thank you very much. It's really inspiring.
Thank you, Franco. Okay, well, if there's no more questions, you don't have to hang out. I don't know which time zone you are, if it's early morning, late at night, or just lunchtime. Colleague of mine always says it's always 5 o'clock somewhere. So if you don't have any more questions and you're happy with what you saw, wish you a very happy day. Thank you very much for joining. If you have questions, then please go ahead. But if you don't, then we're very happy to see that many of you. I was actually worried. I didn't know how many would show up. So I'm very, very happy to see that many of you are interested in this. And give yourself a push, as we say in German. Give yourself a push to contribute to it. I know it takes time, but it's very, very worthwhile. And I think Damiano and Roxy will agree. The joy of the kids when they ask you, oh, is this all already? But I wanted to show you this and this, and it's already 2 hours 45 and you're completely drained, but they just didn't want to, they don't see the necessity to stop. Or afterwards when they ask you, okay, the next meeting, is that next week in 2 weeks, or is it a monthly meeting? And you're like, no, it's neither. I'm like, oh, why not? And this is very worthwhile. So please give yourself a push, help us contribute to it, and reach out. Yes, and also we are, as you see, we are recording the workshop, and I don't know, maybe the organizers, Regia and Regia 1, you can share how the recording will be available. I don't know if they're listening, but we are recording, and I'm pretty sure that this means we're going to put it online afterwards, or have it available, maybe not online for everybody, but I can make sure, Ruya, to send you the recording of the parts that you missed.
I'm pretty sure that we are trying. We will put it in the IFAC webpage that we have.
Yeah. So also, Ruya, since you asked, I'll, as soon as I have the link, as soon as I know, I'll send you the link as well.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. I have to say, Ruya is one of our volunteers, and she's working on the Turkish version. And I'm very, very thankful for this, because it's a language as well with many native speakers that we didn't have covered before. So kudos to you.
Hello, nice to meet you. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay. If that's it, then I will wish you a very happy afternoon. Any final words from you, Roxy, Damiano, or you good to go?
Thanks for participating, people. See you soon, and doing some workshop together.
Yep. Reach out to us if you have any questions or comments later on. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.